Hey everybody, good to see everybody. I'm Charece. Thanks for sticking around and hanging out.
Thanks for having me.
I want to try to bridge the last session into this conversation. Let's maybe stay on the NIL point that you just made and sort of talk a little bit about how the Under Armour strategy and approach to sort of NIL, knowing it is still a little Wild Westy, and also maybe specifically how sort of the difference in the approach to storytelling when it comes to college and up and coming athletes as opposed to the more seasoned professional athletes that you work with.
Yeah, so it definitely, like I said, is the Wild Wild West, and I think you have to iterate cautiously but being optimistic. So as all of us in the industry, we understand that there's some factors that can change your partnership in a heartbeat. The transfer portal is one, an athlete declaring to be a professional while you may be in partnership. So you have to be really selective around those that you want to go deep with, in hopes that you're going to have creative and or a campaign that lasts for a while, because you're just not guaranteed there. But what we have done is we've had a variety of ways that we work with athletes. We've had more, we'll call transactional, the bad word for it. So more of like a situational sort of partnership whereby maybe we're launching something and we are working with some student athletes who help us show the consumer how to use the product. So we have more brand marketing. We have student athletes that are in our brand houses. You may see them on walls, actually wearing some of the products. So that's really, really exciting. And because we do work a lot with student athletes who go to our schools, so Notre Dame, Auburn, Texas Tech, South Carolina, all those folks, a lot of times we have the chance to actually, show them their journey to compete, because they are wearing these types of things to compete with their schools, and they're also wearing it on their own, which is great. So we have those sorts of like situational partnerships, and then you have the select student athletes that you go really deep with. And a lot of people don't realize that we are working with Sam Gordon, who actually is a collegiate soccer player, but she's also an advocate for women who are interested in playing football, right? And so she actually helped us, put together our first women's football camp, and helped us kind of get the word out. And we're also we have created a women's cleat, just in partnership with her and people that are playing the game. So that's a collegiate athlete that we worked with who's not necessarily playing that sport, but has insights to really help us there. And then Aaliyah Boston, as I touched on earlier, is a great example of someone who plays for the reigning national championship team. She has a great story in terms of how sport has helped, how she didn't have the opportunity in sport to really play at a high level back in her hometown of St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. And because we as a brand believe in helping young kids have access to sport, because as we all know, those experiences can change your lives. You can build leadership skills, all that sort of fun stuff, perseverance. We actually went back to St. Thomas and did a basketball camp for young girls down there. So what's been great is that these partnerships have helped us to work with student athletes who are a little bit closer to, I think, that desirable target that we're all trying to reach. But more importantly, we all can recognize and know the importance of really growing a relationship early with brands, and all the consumer insights say that student athletes that fans and young athletes are fans of professional athletes, but they also have a closer tie to, and student athletes are more attainable for them, so they also have strong influence. So for us, it's a balance between pro athletes and student athletes in our portfolio.
It's amazing. It's cool to see how the sort of space has developed so quickly, though, still needs probably a little more rules and regulations.
Probably.
But let's stay on the athlete representation side. Under Armour has a long history of really high-level athlete partnerships. Michael Phelps, Misty Copeland, maybe most notably Steph Curry, right, and I think very recently Kelsey Plum as well. Can you talk about the sort of approach and sort of the ethos for Under Armour when it comes to identifying athletes to work with in that capacity?
Sure. So number one, I said this a little bit earlier, and I was super high level on it. Like, we want to have a relationship where we love one another. Like, it's really easy to see a top tier athlete and be like, they're top of their game. I want to work with them. I want them to wear our product. But then you just open things up to be transactional when you do things like that. So for us, we actually spend a ton of time, and vetting's not the right word. We build relationships and find out who they are. What do they care about, both within sport and out of it? What's their mindset? Like, how do they attack their business of what they play? How do they attack their personal lives? And what we've realized is that there is definitely like a secret sauce in a way that we can connect with athletes, and it's usually ones that have that chip on their shoulder. They have a little bit of like that grit and that grind, and that I may not be the best yet, but I will be. And I'm going to put all the work in that it takes to actually get that done. It's that sort of mindset, along with obviously having, athletic ability and a great personality and reputation, that makes the athlete a good fit for us. And those are the honest and transparent discussions that we have before entering partnerships. And to your point, we just signed Kelsey Plum. And if you guys weren't thinking of it, hopefully you're thinking it now. Like, she is 100% Under Armour, right? She represents all those things that I just said. And that's what we're going to be looking to do and in our partnerships to ensure that it is authentic and that we're truly there to build each other's brands.
Yeah, when you started saying chip on the shoulder, that made a lot more sense that she's part of the Under Armour family now too. Are there other athletes on the sort of short wish list?
Yeah, I mean, there's always. Listen, our roster could grow like any day, right? It's really important to have your eyes open, but I'm also really proud of what we have. Like, Justin Jefferson is in the conversation right now for MVP and Offensive Player of the Year, and he's super swaggy. Like, he's got all the goods. He's what everyone wants to be. He's a trendsetter. Like, so we just have athletes that we're already working with. So I think the challenge for us is to ensure that we break through and that people understand like those relationships and that we leverage them the right way. But always eyes are open, for the right fit, but we're also really happy with some of the great people that we have right now.
All right, well, let's maybe sort of switch topics and zoom out a little bit and do a little more on your background, if you don't mind. You shared a little bit earlier, but your sort of career has hit on maybe almost every corner of the sports industry, I think. Can you talk a little bit about your path to Under Armour and sort of your career to this point?
Sure. So definitely, I believe in diversity of the boardroom, and I believe in diversity of experiences. And similar to like Sherry was talking about earlier, I first started, so I was a student athlete at NC State. I played volleyball there. I got my grad degree, and then I started my career at what's now ESPN's World of Sport and Business Development. And it was sport tourism, right? Like, it's about bringing sporting events to there and selling theme park tickets to room nights. So a great introduction into like the sport tourism. And then I went to the agency side of things at Wasserman, where I had to be that expert in terms of my client, American Express or Wells Fargo at the time, but also the industry and helping them find that intersection. And then from a diversity perspective, I went to the nonprofit side of sports and working with the National Basketball Retired Players Association, which actually bridged the personal gap for me, because my father played in the NFL in the late 70s and the early 80s, and so I grew up as someone with a parent who played when they were not making any money, to be very clear, back then, and hadn't finished his degree and had a family with 3 kids to support. So I grew up in that, and I had a really strong inkling and desire to help families like mine, and that hence me going to the Retired Players Association, where a lot of the members at the time were more of my dad's age and more of like that era of the NBA. And I went there for a very different experience, and I realized when you're in smaller rooms, your voice can be even more powerful. And I saw, we're able to work with them to change the bylaws of the organization to include former WNBA, athletes, which was a lesson for me in terms of just going somewhere different and bringing a fresh perspective of how that could help. And then ultimately, after being there, I missed big business and set my sight on PepsiCo for brand positions, which is what I had first there. So I worked for Bubbly Sparkling Water. I worked in product or packaging innovation, but then I also worked on the sports team. So leading baseball, softball, and Hispanic fan strategy. And then for Mountain Dew, leading their NBA and WNBA partnerships. And which brings me to Under Armour, which is like putting it all together. Because while I love getting all that brand experience at PepsiCo and really drilling in on understanding the consumer mindset and how sports played a role into it, those consumers weren't necessarily the ones on the field. And so I longed to kind of leverage the insights of being an athlete and kind of bringing that all together. And so now I'm at Under Armour, where we're touching athletes every day, both professional and the everyday athlete, those who just are striving to lose a few pounds, get stronger, whatever the thing is that they want to do. So super excited to be here. And this remit of our America's business is super exciting. There's a lot there, collegiate and, grassroots, which is definitely like the future of our brand, I would say. And I feel like it's a chance to kind of put it all together. So to summarize that, diversity of experiences, I think, is what can really be a differentiating factor, for you in your career. And not everything was perfectly like planned out along the way, but it wasn't linear. But I feel really good about how those things can really like pull it all together and just bring a fresh perspective into a really cool organization.
Yeah, well, that's an incredibly impressive resume and background, which is exciting to hear. I think hopefully most people generally are aware of the Under Armour sort of origin story, but for those that might be less familiar, or it's been a while since they've sort of thought it through, can you give a little bit of the Kevin's original sort of founding of the company?
Well, this is a good test for me because I'm just over a year in. Do I have the story now? Yeah. So the key about Under Armour is we were definitely created for athletes by an athlete. Kevin Plank was a student athlete at University of Maryland and really smartly just realized that every day that they were out there playing on the field, sweating down, they were their jerseys and their t-shirts were getting soaked, and it was adding 5 pounds to them, and they were just slower and getting around. So he sought out to create a product that would stop them from being dripping in sweat, at the end of practice every single day, and created it, in his grandmother's basement in Georgetown, and really had like boots on the ground in terms of like really growing the brand. He leveraged relationships that he had made with people at Fork Union, where he had gone to prep school, at Maryland, who had gone on to play in the NFL, all these great people who were in locker rooms with professional athletes, and passed his prototype around, and over time got feedback and really grew the business. So it's, again, just back to like why I'm here. Like, this brand, it was built for athletes, and I can attest, having been there a year now, that when you talk to the folks who are building the products, they are, one, spending a ton of time with athletes to understand what the needs are. And we try to be on our front foot in terms of like anticipating what those needs will be. So when you think about us, it definitely is about innovation, and it's about like what's next for the athlete. How do we make sure you have zero distractions when you're trying to compete and do the thing that you're doing? And that's what's super exciting about the brand.
Yeah, that's great. And then I think a recent announcement was a sort of appointment of new CEO, Stephanie. And can you talk, you're a very successful executive yourself, but to have another, female executive at the top of in a really important, iconic sports company. Can you talk about sort of what that means, and also a little bit of the, maybe her vision for the future?
Yeah, I have not had the chance to meet her yet. I guess I, haven't been put on the meet and greet list just yet. But I will say I'm excited for her. I'm excited for all the great work I've witnessed the great work that she's done at Marriott, and I've certainly read about her. So I'm excited to see what she does here. Clearly, this was an extensive, search. We took our time with it. So knowing that she rose to the top says a lot about her already. So I'm looking forward to see what her era looks like, and hopefully I'll make that meet and greet list when she gets started.
Well, she's like 30 days in, so I think you're doing all right.
No, she hasn't quite got in the door yet, but okay. But I'm looking forward to it when she does.
Good. And then you mentioned it in the last panel too. Can you maybe go a little deeper in sort of the approach to sort of women's sports marketing, and sort of how Under Armour shows up, and sort of what the approach is there?
Yeah, so I would say that I think that, for us, we are being more intentional about making sure that people know like what we're doing with women. I'm actually really excited. I mentioned a little bit about that camp that we did with Aaliyah Boston, and even what we did with Sam Gordon, but also with Jordan Thompson, who's a gold medal Olympian on our USA volleyball team, right? Like, there's these women that are really, really great at their sport, but have this heart to do more. And so for her, being a Black woman, playing volleyball, which I was too, I can definitely attest to what some of her experience was. She just didn't have a lot of people kind of like her playing the sport, at least around her, and she realized that not everyone had access to that great teaching. And so we actually worked with her to go back to her alma mater, Cincinnati, and do a camp there. So I would say that what's happening with us in the women's space is that the women are really stepping up here, and we've always had great product for women, but I think that we're now like partnering with the ones who are wanting to ensure that others are experiencing it as well, which is super, super exciting. So more to come is what I will say there. We certainly have our eye on it, and I think that you're going to see us really make some waves there. And from a product standpoint, because that was asked earlier and I didn't touch on it that much, but we have created the Breakthrough shoe, which is a basketball shoe, which is designed, for women. And we're now in our 4th iteration coming up like this fall, and have seen just great feedback in terms of how it feels different around the toe box in different areas, and how women are really appreciating that we've taken that detail and really made it come to life. And then when it comes to our apparel, like, a lot of people just don't know some of the cute things we have going on here. You can really be functional in how you work out and look really good. Those are two great insights that consumers are saying they want from brands, and we have that. So we're just being super intentional now about ensuring that that message gets out there so that people can realize that Under Armour certainly could be a one-stop shop for the full family.
And you just mentioned sort of intentional ways that Under Armour intentionally shows up in this space. Can you talk about some of the other ways maybe you're most proud of how sort of Under Armour shows up, more broadly in sports?
Yeah, I think what I'll give it, just kind of to play off of how I talked about the Under Armour story. I think what's been great is that we've been okay with being different, right? Like, there's certain ways that, brands can sometimes show up when they're in our category, and you can kind of, you see the ad, you know exactly who it is, and this, that, and the other. And I love that we have been comfortable with doing it our own way. And I'll share this because I think it was just publicly said earlier today, but many of us know that we started this brand with a pretty iconic tagline around protecting this house, but I know we all haven't really heard it in a while, but you will. You'll definitely start hearing it again, because that's the swagger, that's the edge that really made us different. And so more to come on it, but I would say that our approach is just really getting back to our roots. And our roots is zigging when someone else zags, and just doing it our own way. And we've done some of that, but more of that is definitely coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the sort of a little more about sticking to the roots, or going back to the roots maybe, and sort of and how that influences both how you think about building the team and internally, but also externally how the marketing shows up. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's been great to see how we have evolved. We have so many passionate folks inside our company who have been there from the start, or close to the start, and that sort of passion, you can't, people like myself coming in from the outside can't possibly match, in terms of just living it for so long. So we have a great group of that internally that just has this pride about this brand that's going to work super hard to ensure that it comes through. And then we have an influx of myself and others who are coming in with just different industry experiences. And I think the marriage of it together is what gets me really excited, because again, not every company has that groundswell of passion for a brand like Under Armour does in terms of how we started. So matching the two together, I think, is where you'll start to see the magic happen, which is why I can smile like this, because, I know it's to come, but I also know that we have such a strong foundation. So from a marketing standpoint, I think you'll always see us showcasing the athlete's journey to compete, is what we call it. So how they train, how they compete and recover from that, which obviously our products play a central role. But what we're starting to be more intentional about is taking a look at how the athlete lives, what they're doing off the court, off the field, off the pitch, which is the majority of where everyone spends their time, right? Because people aren't training, every day. So that's exciting. I think, when you think about our marketing and advertising, we definitely went super heavy on the journey to compete. And I think you'll see us really embracing the other side of the athlete as well moving forward.
That's great. Well, we've got a few minutes left. I want to give sort of the room the opportunity to ask a few questions of Charece. You want to start back there?
Back here. Chris, Mike.
Hi, Charece. Chris Mike, Relometrics, and formerly many years at Nike in sports marketing, so I have a unique appreciation for the work that you do. So you talked a lot about some of the qualities and things that you look for when establishing relationships with athletes, right? But we all know when you attach a brand to an athlete, a person, an individual, doesn't always go the way you maybe anticipate. So there are a few buildings at Nike that have been renamed, right, as a result of that. So any sort of stories that you can share or learnings that you've had for those instances when you've invested in people, in athletes, and it has not gone the way that you thought?
Yeah, without getting super specific, and I'll just speak generally, kind of across my career, because I've worked with a lot of athletes just in the various roles that I've been in. That can happen. I think the key is to ensure that you're working with good people, not only to the athlete, but their representation, because I think if you can just speak at a human level around the situation that may have transpired, you can find creative solves. So maybe an athlete isn't fit to be the face of something because they've got some heat around them in the moment. Sure, that happens. But if you don't want to cut ties completely because maybe it was just one snap judgment and they'll grow from it or whatever may have happened. I can't speak to a specific scenario, or at least it doesn't make sense to, just because I want to give anything away necessarily. I think that you can work around it and work together. And that's where the word partnership comes in. I think early career, I stopped using the word sponsorship for that reason, because it truly is a partnership and there's some bending and flexing that you have to do to make it work. And that's what you try to do. You try to salvage where you can, and if you have to cut ties, because again, it is business, you do, but hopefully it comes from a respectful place to where you can move on from it amicably.
Got another one up.
Great question. Cool Nikes too, by the way, back there.
Hey, how you doing, Charece? My name is Will Bradford with Revel Moments. You mentioned that grassroots is the future of Under Armour business. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we have a platform called UA Next, and basically it's a camp series of events. Football, basketball, we're getting into some other sports, volleyball as well, and it typically culminates into All-America games. So we just recently had our All-America football and volleyball games at, part of it was at ESPN's Water Sports, and then part of it was at UCF. That's where the women played. But those are really key to us, because we're working early with elite athletes and we're helping to make them better. These are free of charge events that we do for them to kind of give them the training, both as athletes, but also the mental, agility and toughness, recovery, all that stuff they need. And then, like many other competitors in the space, we also have basketball circuit. So our UAA circuit is super popular. Our women's circuit, hands down, is the best. Our girls, I should say, is hands down the best. But we also have the circuit as well. I think the opportunity for us is, obviously we are looking to build connection by doing authentic things with athletes, but also we've been learning that they provide great insights in terms of what's next. And I think with the NIL rules sort of loosening, I think that also provides opportunity to have have a more longer term connection with some of those athletes. So for us, it's been a nice piece of our puzzle in terms of what we do in sports, but it's something that I see us definitely investing in more and ensuring that we are trying to scale the experiences, because right now it's somewhat limited to where we're hosting these events. We leverage our partner at IMG Academies to do a lot of it, but there are ways to kind of scale it to ensure that we're getting into more households and more communities, and that's kind of the work to do to figure out how we kind of bridge it a little bit more.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Charece, for the extended stay up here. This was really great.
You know what? I think we had one more question. We have you up here. Sorry, we're going to steal you for one more. I think there was one more over here. While we have you, let's spin the rules a little bit. Sorry, Lauren. One more quick question.
Charece, I know you're responsible for the Americas. I was just curious about the company's view of Europe and expanding into Europe.
Yeah, I'm not the best person to speak on that. We obviously do have marketers and sport marketers in the region who are doing a lot of great work there. I can tell you from my interactions with them, they're spending a ton of time in global football and really kind of growing our roster there, and as well as some other sports. But yeah, I'm definitely not as equipped to talk about the business in that space and what they're doing there, but I do know it is a focus, and we definitely endeavor to be a global company, and we have, started that process, even though we're still pretty rooted, in the Americas region. I think my team maybe works with 80% of the partnerships that Under Armour has, but we are growing in EMEA.
All right. Hey, thank you guys so much. Awesome. We had Charece for 2 panels, and look at these Under Armour shoes too, by the way. Nice Nikes, but I don't know. We're gonna one up you here with those Under Armours.
Wait, I can tell you about them.
I want to hear about it. Listen,
the flip speeds, right? So this was definitely designed with the athlete in mind. I don't know about you guys if you have teenage kids or not, but they very much may be wearing their shoes like this, and they're stepping on the back of them, and they're just messing up their shoes. So UA saw that happening and created a shoe whereby you can intentionally actually step into them when you want to, and then you just click down the BOA and you tighten it up, and now you're ready to go. This is slip mode that I'm in, but I have a 2-year-old home, so if I'm with him and he runs off from me when he's not supposed to be and I need to catch him really quickly, I can absolutely be in this mode, speed mode, where I pull up the back and then I tighten it up
and then I run behind my 2-year-old, and he doesn't run into the street. So this is the UA slip speed.